There's a really bizarre new obsession in media today, and it's largely unprecedented. I call it the sexy genius. In older media, the genius was always portrayed as this gibberish-talking, book-smart shut-in. Their sex appeal, if any, was largely non-existent. In fact, they were presented as these loveless, desireless beings who were largely there to be a plot convenience. But recently we're seeing more and more of this sexy genius character. One who's alluring and sometimes even sexually appealing because of their intense intellect. As Irene Adler said,
"Brainy's the new sexy."
Other common traits include being outcasts or rebels from normal society, having a massive ego, which usually means they don't know when to stop talking, and actually being very, sexually potent. Now for this, I'm going to use 4 very different examples from 4 very different forms of media and do a bit of a compare and contrast. So for this, we're going to be looking at Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty, Sherlock Holmes from the BBC Sherlock, Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones, and Alexander Hamilton from Hamilton. Oh yeah. Okay, so Rick Sanchez. Well, he's not sexy by conventional standards. We see that he's very alluring to the people around him and the audience. He's got a vast network of alien friends in which he seems to be something like the life of the party. After all, he parties to get
riggedy wrecked, son!
And Summer, Beth, and Morty are all really drawn to his charm and intelligence. And we as the audience want to know more about him and want to follow him on his adventures. And don't forget, when he becomes Tiny Rick, he almost immediately and inexplicably becomes the most popular kid at school. We also see that despite being an aging alcoholic with a permanent belching problem, he could be very sexually energetic with the society-devouring life form Unity. And while he's not always showing a sexual appetite, he seems to be highly knowledgeable about it. Like, remember that time they went into Morty's math teacher's mind and within 30 seconds he was already in a full BDSM outfit? Well, like other characters on this list, we see that he's someone who's very comfortable with his sexuality and doesn't seem to get hung up about it. We also see similar traits of an outcast and rebel. On Earth, Rick sees beyond the planetary mindset of everyone else and looks on with contempt and boredom at the mundane lives of everyone else, causing him to shun our conventional ideas about morality and normalcy. But Earth is his home, and anywhere else he'd still be an outsider. We also see Rick has a lot of problems with authorities, often going out of his way to avoid things like intergalactic customs or the show's version of the government. In fact, the show hints that Rick was something of a revolutionary freedom fighter in his early days. But what about Sherlock? Well, in the show, we see that he's got a very alluring magnetic quality to some of the people around him. For Watson, he represents danger, excitement, even a repressed violence. We see how he unintentionally attracts people like Irene Adler and Moriarty without really knowing or caring why. Sexually, he's somewhat the odd man out of the group, as he often appears to be asexual, or at least beyond sexuality in his mind. However, from his vast, profound understanding of people, we see that he can make himself sexually alluring and fake it in order to get something. However, this sexually alluring quality mostly comes from the female fanbase, who worship the character and the actor who plays him, Benedict Cumberbatch. Now, this isn't something I entirely get, but if I were to caution a guess, I'd say that part of the reason why he's so appealing is his deep, highly intricate understanding of human nature. We also see that he's an outcast by his high level of intellect, that although he's in a bit of a self-imposed exile from the rest of the world, placing himself above it, he's also unable to relate to most people. We also see he's a bit of a rebel in the way he treats most authority figures. Like when he showed up naked to Buckingham Palace just to fuck with his brother Mycroft, the symbol of familial and governmental authority. We also see that although he works with the police force, he holds a lot of their standards and the people who work there in contempt, and as usual considers them inferior. Then there's Tyrion Lannister, a lover of wine, books, and sex. We see that he has an alluring quality to women by using his mind and words over his body. Despite being constantly underestimated by his enemies, Tyrion manages to use his intelligence to read people, deduce what they want, and make himself useful to them. This alluring quality has also made him a fan favorite on the series. The exception here is that unlike Sherlock and Rick, he's an active seeker of affection. We see how certain people like Varys, Bronn, and Shay can see past his appearance and be drawn to his intellect, but most characters don't see him as anything more than a dwarf, causing him to be an outcast. Yet despite this, Tyrion is almost always guided by a strong moral center. When he sees injustice, he's not afraid to stand up to authority figures like Joffrey, Cersei, or Tywin, whether it gets him in trouble or not. And last, Alexander Hamilton. Now, Hamilton in the show says it himself. I'm a polymath, a pain in the ass, a massive pain. We constantly see Hamilton as an abrasive, ambitious man who really doesn't know when to shut up. But he's also highly intelligent, always one step ahead of his political rivals, and savvy with crafting new political systems or military tactics. This intellect is partially what makes him so attractive, but it's also his courage and impulsiveness, his ego. We see Angelica, Eliza, and Mariah Reynolds all seem to fall for him for both his looks and his mind. And again, sexually, we see that he's quite a ladies' man. The show makes a point of saying how Martha Washington named her feral tomcat after him. And again, we see the massive following the character has on places like Tumblr, with people who have crushes on him. There's even a Twitter called Hamilton Sexualities. But what about an outcast? Well, that's there right from the top. Hamilton was a bastard, orphan, son of a whore. This was not a man who was born part of the elite, who like Tyrion had to claw his way to respectability and status with only his intellect. I hope we can see more of these type of characters in our media because, in their own way, they're each kind of inspirational. There's something about the outcast genius that's inherently subversive. They push us to better our minds while also thinking outside the box. It can maybe even help to improve our society. And wouldn't that be a great day for art? Hey, if you like this video, please make sure to subscribe to my channel, Pass a Joke Productions, follow my Facebook and Twitter page, and check out my Patreon. But what do you think? Did I miss any characters on my list? Leave me a comment, let me know what you think.